My incredible hair. My hairdresser canceled today, so we're just going along for the ride. Thanks for joining me. I'm streaming live on X, Facebook, and YouTube. Ooh, I'm in the studio, so I'll be talking that way. Thank you for joining me. As always, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to my channel. I will catch you guys on the flip side.
Coming to you live from the heart of the free state of New Hampshire. This is The Independence with Carla Gericke. And now, here's your host, Carla Gericke.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to The Independence. This is Wednesday, the 25th of March, and I am so delighted to be here with you again today. Quick lay of the land. As you can see, I have some props today. So firstly, we'll be doing just a little retrospective on Sunshine Week, which was last week. I will talk about my op-ed in the Union Leader and sort of a little bit about the history of redactions and how they are being exploited as a new way for the government to not give us information. I'm going to give a quick shout out to the Josiah Bartlett Center. We will talk a little bit about the First Amendment and the Great Ish case that just came out yesterday, which tied in very nicely with my actual arrest story, which was yesterday, 16 years ago. I got arrested in Ware, New Hampshire. And so there was a nice little overlap with this Missouri versus Biden censorship case where we just got a consent decree that came out yesterday. If you're watching this in an airport somewhere, you're probably stuck because of the TSA. So we'll delve into that a little bit. And if there's a little bit of time at the end, I want to talk a little bit about the fear factor that is being manipulated or being used against you, manufactured against you, to get you to care way too much about politics. All right, so first of all, let's start with the shout out to the Josiah Bartlett Center. I thought it was interesting. They do incredible work. They're New Hampshire's free market nonprofit. Drew Klein, who's like the head guy there, is very interested in numbers, and he does a really good job of condensing things down. So that is always a really great resource if you're looking for good data, because in order to make sure that people are functioning in a actual reality, you have to know what's going on and you have to be able to trust your numbers. So I thought it was interesting. I heard him say that the left nonprofits and sort of outside state organizations are vastly outspending the right, and the rates are astonishing. So about $16 to $20 million has poured into New Hampshire just for public policy advocacy. And that's just basically astroturfing. And so there's this groundswell of 501c3s that are coming from out of state that are funding campaigns in New Hampshire. Now, some of you may recall that I said and warned that if we dial things up too hard, that was likely to happen. And I'm not sure that we have a commiserative amount of support on the other side to keep things in sort of balance. So one of the examples that might drive this home for you is actually there is a bill up at the State House at the moment that is suggesting that to expand school choice in New Hampshire, they want to allow open enrollment. What would that mean? That would just mean that parents from anywhere in New Hampshire have the choice to be like, hey, actually, I don't want to send my kid to that school. That's the school in my zip code. I want to send my kid to this school over here. And then you would be allowed to do that. So basically, taking away the shackles of your zip code. Now, that open enrollment program will keep 100% of the money in the public school system. So there's no diverting of funds going anywhere to anyone. And yet the unions are freaking out, and word on the street from this millions of dollars of public policy that's come into New Hampshire is saying that open enrollment is bad, that it is taking money away from public schools, and nothing can be farther from the truth. So, really, open enrollment is just giving people more choice and also building in tax accountability, because what does that more choice create? It creates competition between the schools. So if suddenly all the parents are saying, hey, we're not going to send our kids to that school, and everyone is going somewhere else, again, with 100% of the funds remaining in the public schools, then we probably know maybe there's something wrong with the school over here, right? And that gives us an opportunity for reform. So there is a built-in tax accountability part of this as well. Um, they also recently at the Josiah Bartlett Center did a whole study about our Manchester buses, which, by the way, every passenger costs like $20 when they're riding on the bus. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I have never seen a full bus. In fact, I've probably never seen a bus in New Hampshire, definitely not in Manchester, that had more than 5 riders. So to be subsidizing those buses to the tune of $20, $19 per rider seems very, very counterintuitive to me. So these are just some of the fun facts you can discover on the Josiah Bartlett Center's website. So I highly encourage people to jump in there, sign up for their newsletter, and learn more about the actual data and facts of what's going on in New Hampshire. All right, the next thing I want to talk about is right to know. So last week was Sunshine Week here in New Hampshire and nationally. And Sunshine Week is basically where a lot of people focus their attention on open government and what is going on. So nationally, of course, that's known as FOIA. Those are the federal open information requests that you can put in. Here in New Hampshire, we call it right to know. It is under RSA 91A. And last week, I wrote an op-ed, which you can see right over here, which I'm going to read to you guys sort of ad hoc, about this loophole that they're using now. And I remember screaming black bloody murder back in the day when things started to get severely redacted. So what is a redaction? It's censorship, and we'll get into that Missouri versus Biden part, which of course was the court case where our government put pressure on tech companies during COVID to censor information that, one, turned out to be true, and two, that they absolutely should not have tried to stop. Because one of the things we know about science is it's never fixed. It is always open to being changed. And even that statement, trust the science, therefore we can say all these things over here are misinformation, was at its very core a false premise. So I'll get into that case as well. But first, because I brought extra props today, this one is just really to show you, this is from my office back home where people know I save a lot of the articles over the years, both of my own activism and activism with the Free State Project and the various organizations I work on. But I'm very proud of this because the union leader back in, I think it was 2021, so 5 years ago now, for Sunshine Week, did an incredibly brave thing. What they did is they published the entire Lori's List. That is the colloquial name for the exculpatory evidence schedule, the EES. They rebranded it as they like to do when something gets a lot of stank on it. They're like, oh, we should give this a new name so people don't notice. But the union leader, to their credit, in the Sunday paper during Sunshine Week back in 2021, published the entire Lori's list with all the redactions of how this was presented to us after a 91A request for police officers who are so questionable in their ethics and morals that they are not allowed to testify in court. And their names and what they did, and let's see here. So their names were blacked out. The date of the incident was blacked out, and they left the department, the date of notification, which was a nonsense data point, and the category of whatever they did wrong. So let's take a look at this. This is back from 2021. You don't really have to see any of the details. The only thing you should really know and understand is, do you see all those black lines? Now, where have we been seeing so many of those black lines as well? With things like the Epstein files, right? They're like, oh, there's a law now that says we have to disclose this information, but why don't we just black out all our buddies' names so that you don't actually know what's going on? Well, what we do know is there is a cabal of elites who are rotten to the core. All right, so I'm not going to read this whole thing, but this was in Sunday's paper, and the headline says, Black ink betrays a constitutional promise. And at the start, I explain all about this original very brave thing the union leader did. Why was it brave? Both because they had to actually, spend the money to put that in. And I'm grateful to this day to Gregory Sullivan, who I called and I was like, hey, I have this crazy idea. Do you think the union leader would do this? And they did. And there's actually a photo in this one, which was from Sundays. This gets a little meta, with me in my bed with the original holding it. And my husband took a photo. So now we have a photo of me holding this one. So it'll become like iterative over time. But that's really just my fun way of reminding myself that, we end up doing these kinds of things and projects over a lifetime once you find those things that you're passionate about. And I'm passionate about open government because you cannot hold people accountable if you don't know what they're doing, and you cannot reform, although I might make the argument you cannot reform government unless we know what they're doing. So I'm going to start with part 1, Article 8 of the New Hampshire Constitution is clear. All power residing in and being derived from the people, all the magistrates and officers of government are their substitutes and agents, and at all times accountable to them. Government, therefore, should be open, accessible, accountable, and responsive. To that end, the public's right to access to governmental proceedings and records shall not be unreasonably restricted. And then I go on to say 91A echoes openness is essential to a democratic society, yet officials treat these as optional when disclosure risks scrutiny. So then I talk about this, and then I go on to say that closer to home, New Hampshire's exculpatory evidence schedule stayed secret for decades under privacy claims, right? So that's where they go and they say, oh, this is a personnel issue and you shouldn't know about it, blah, de blah, right? But courts ruled in 2020, this was a huge deal, that it must be public. So since then, we've seen phased releases starting in 2021, slightly expanded in 2022, yet with ongoing redactions taking place. So, this to me is an issue. I mean, if there's problems with government officials, we should root it out before it becomes the YDC scandal, before it becomes a rotten to the core scandal, right? Another place we saw a lot of redaction was during COVID, right? Right to know requests regarding vaccine data, exemption denials, the school mandates, and DHHS decisions were often met with heavy redactions or exemptions under 91A5, which is the personnel exception. Look, there are legitimate privacy concerns like the HIPAA stuff. Okay, I get it. But these broad blackouts have obscured policy deliberations. So now they're just hiding behind things and policy changes that have actually altered or removed what actually happened. Now, many of you have been watching the show for a long time, and you know, one, I was right during COVID, and that as we were telling the stories as they were coming out, I was pointing out that they were literally in real time changing reality by like changing things like definitions, amongst other things, the definition of the word vaccine. So then this op-ed goes on to say also, these are not isolated incidences, because we saw on top of like something like the Lori's list and these COVID redactions, we saw it happening with the Epstein files as well. So what can you do? So towards the end of this, there's some call to action. First of all, you should understand redactions are not neutral. That is the government basically giving you the finger in a nice way with some black ink, right? And we shouldn't tolerate it. And we should definitely not tolerate getting, like I have seen, where it's a stack of paper and the entire thing is blacked out. That is absolutely unacceptable. You have not actually complied with the request, and certainly not with the spirit of the law. So the constitutional isn't optional. I mean, it does kind of feel like it is these days, and we can talk about that. But sunshine is a right. Strip away these unnecessary redactions. We, the people, own the government, and we should demand to see it clearly, warts and all. All right, so black ink betrays a constitutional promise. We should stop tolerating all these redactions. It is bad for open government. We had our Right to Know meeting, as we do on the third Saturday of every month. I became president a few months ago, so we are ramping up, sort of doing an overhaul. We'll be having a summit in the next couple of months. I have some enthusiastic new volunteers. Thank you to Jake, in case you're watching. So we're started updating the website. And we are going to get together and see if we can create a better approach to what is happening with open government here in New Hampshire, possibly even an entire overhaul of the whole 91A system. There are so many, exceptions. It's become untenable. They're like redacting the body cam footage. It's a mess. And so I think it is time for us to go, okay, too many people have been piling in for too long. It is a mess. Let's step away, let's step out, let's look at it big picture and kind of see if we can implement a better system. Why? Because New Hampshire does everything better than everywhere else. We, of course, are, up there in terms of quality of living, low taxes, best trust laws, all of that. So I'm looking forward to, in this summer, where we're doing a hard pivot on PorcFest, the Porcupine Freedom Festival, which is put on by the Free State Project. You can go to my website, carlagericke.com, and get the scoop there. But basically, we're taking the event from kind of showing people in a mock way on one campground what we have built here. We're zooming out, and we are going to show people really across the entire state what we've done. So if you'd been waiting for when am I going to come to PorcFest, this is your year. You can stay where you want. We'll make some roadmaps for you, and you will have the bragging rights to be like, hey, I was a trailblazer on this new format, which I do think lends itself to scalability and success over time. Of course, trying new things, there's always a bit of a risk. This will be the first year. It might be a little hiccupy, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Or I was, until Trump and his administration decided to go to war on behalf of Israel in Iran, which is why on the way here, I saw gas prices. You 2 weeks ago or the week before the war, they were under $3 here in New Hampshire. I just drove by the gas station and it is up to $3.79. So we'll call it $3.80. That is a problem. And it has gone up almost $1 since the war started. This war that I guess we have declared that we've won a whole bunch of times, and we've declared the ultimatums. I saw a tweet yesterday. I'm not sure. I did not fact check this, but I saw that they had opened the Strait of Hormuz, that ships were allowed to go through. Every ship had to pay a 2 million won fee. Now, I have no idea if that's true, but it made me laugh because I was like, oh, if the outcome of this war is that they put in a boat toll through the strait and broke the petrodollar by demanding payment in Chinese yuan, then I don't think we won the war, if you know what I mean. All right, so I think we have about 10 minutes left. So with that time, I want to talk about this Missouri versus Biden situation, mostly because you can go to my X account from yesterday where I did a little shout out to my First Amendment case because of my arrest date was yesterday. And that tweet did pretty well because it sort of coincided with this First Amendment jaw boning case, as they're calling it. So what was at stake is basically there was a claim that the White House, the Surgeon General, the CDC, and CISA, FBI, DHS, etc., violated the First Amendment by coercing or significantly encouraging private social media companies like Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and X, YouTube, and LinkedIn to censor, suppress, and deboost constitutionally protected speech. And the targets there included things like COVID-19 misinformation. If you see the word misinformation, you're probably being misinformed. Let's just say that that's a tell. So things here for under that was the lab leak theory, which amongst other people, the CIA has now said, that actually seems kind of likely. Misinformation was vaccine efficacy and side effects, anything about mass mandates, or anything about natural immunity. So basically the slate of things I was talking about during 2020 and that I was heavily censored for. On top of that, the other things that they were censoring was the 2020 election integrity claims. That wasn't an area I really played around in much. I mean, I have my opinions. The other one was Hunter Biden's laptop story. Now, that one turned out to be 100% true. That was where I got my first censorship way back when on Facebook for a week for sharing that one. And then, of course, other dissenting views. So what came out of this decision? Is it a victory? Well, everyone's claiming a little bit of victory here, but it's a slight win for the anti-censorship side. I want to say, hey, this is one for the good guys like us, for the free speech advocates. But, it's pretty narrowly tailored and it's not great. So SCOTUS was a procedural loss. So there's no nationwide injunction. And there was this narrow thing with the standing issue, which Judge Alito, who's an originalist, He dissented. I actually agree with his opinion, where he was saying, they kind of punted what could have been a much, much, much stronger case with a lot more censure on these departments. So, is it a win? Okay, so we got a consent decree, but it is very limited. It's only limited to 3 agencies, and honestly, the workaround they're going to do there immediately is just to create a different department and then be like, what? We didn't break the consent decree. We just created someone else to censor you. Please, I hope they do call that one Big Bro. And then the Biden era officials, the whole of government censorship apparatus is now under this court ordered restraints. But again, the workarounds are pretty significant. So there were some wins for transparency. Among other things, there was massive discovery with exposed emails, Slack messages, and the pressure campaigns. So we did get to see a little bit under the hood to see how they were doing this censorship. So how can this sort of impact things in the future? So future administrations, both on the left or the right, now face this court precedent and an enforceable decree showing that threats to the big tech companies plus coordination could be a 1A violation. So this might embolden some of the tech companies to start to resist the government's requests more stringently without fear of retaliation. Amongst other things, I did learn today that X does post a transparency report. I'm not sure how frequently, but they actually do disclose the number of requests they get and what they're doing with them. So the broader precedent is it strengthens state action doctrine in the digital age. So I think what we will start to see is more censorship court cases, right? So anytime we think there's censorship, people are going to start to sue. And I certainly would be in that sort of category. And this is a 10-year decree. So for 10 years, they're not supposed to do it. But again, as I said, I think the workarounds are going to make this not as strong as the internet is kind of letting us feel like we had a giant win. So we'll see how this comes out, how this plays out, but I am not 100% happy. I think it could have been stronger. I wish the Supreme Court hadn't punted those bigger, deeper questions. But, sometimes we got to take the wins where we get them. So let's, at least say it wasn't an entirely, there was a little bit of a win there. I have a couple of minutes left, so I want to let you guys know about some things that are coming up. I will be starting a PorcFest, the Next Generation Roadshow. I will be doing one at the Quill on Monday evening at 6 p.m., I believe, the following Monday. So that would be the 6th of April at the Inn. I'm going to try and get to the Shell to do one there. So I will post all of that on my website, carlagericke.com. And of course, in order for this model to work, we're going to need everyone to kind of step up. But the number one thing we're going to need is people from out of state to come to our great state for that week, starting on the summer solstice. All right. I wanted to talk about the TSA and the nonsense that's going on there. Maybe I'll save that one for next week, but I'll leave you with this little cliffhanger because who knew? I mean, Canada has privatized security at their airports. And if Canada doesn't have a bunch of commies and unionists at the airport, then I'm pretty sure America can figure it out too. So Elon had said maybe he would pay the salaries for the TSA agents that are not currently getting paid. Now we've got ICE in there. All of this seems bad. So I will let you guys know next week if the lines are still long, what is up with the TSA. That is all I have time for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I wish you peace, love, and understanding. All right, that's it.